Yeah, and the record companies, you know, they switch where they can make a buck. So.
Metallica's finest hour for many fans was Master of Puppets, their heaviest, most complex, and best produced album yet.
What they've already done with the first two albums, which is pretty well put a very underground form of music onto the edge of the mainstream, they go right onto the mainstream with this one. This is the one that turns on like masses of people onto rock music, you know.
People either really love Metallica or thought they were too commercial now.
They're all over mainstream media. This is big. This is proper big records.
This year, Metallica reached the top 30 with their album Master of Puppets, and Anthrax, Slayer, and Megadeth each released records on a major label for the first time.
We're sort of like one step. We're like furthest out in like left field, pretty much from the middle of any of the sort of bigger heavy metal bands today. You know, sort of as unsafe as you can get. And we get away with it.
Master! Well, even just before, actually, you know, it was a few months earlier, it was August of '85, actually, Metallica played A Day on the Green, where they were in between, they played with Rat, Y&T, the Scorpions.
And Yngwie Malmsteen, Rat, and Y&T, a bunch of poser bands. And Metallica was second on the bill. But it was interesting because in order to get one of the photo passes that they had, I had to do their dishes. They actually had me do their dishes. So they had me do their dishes. I had to take out the garbage, do a couple other chores around the house. But it was a great show. I got really, really drunk. And I was so excited. It was like the biggest show I'd never been backstage at a huge festival like that. I got some great shots on there. That's all the best outdoor ones I got. But yeah, that was so much fun. I mean, I can't even describe. And that was probably what, that was 20 years ago.
That was Metallica's first big step, I think, into the mainstream, especially out here in America. You know, they were exposed to a total mainstream crowd. And then Master of Puppets came out, and almost instantly they were put on tour with Ozzy Osbourne. And that's where things come out. Everybody was jumping on the bandwagon. Everybody was walking around wearing a Master of Puppets shirt and thinking it was their first album.
Cliff, by this point, was contributing strongly to the songwriting because he had this classical influence and because he could throw in all these amazing solo sections which he wrote. And in fact, the album is unusual. It has these extended bass solos which don't sound like a bass because he used all kind of effects to change the sound. But his influence is profound on Master of Puppets.
For me, it's the most creative of their attempts. It's just awesome. There's a lot of Cliff in that record, and just the textures of the rhythms. It's just phenomenal. It's an awesome sounding record, and I just love the songs. It's just great songs on that record.
This was the moment. In many ways, Metallica reached their peak. They were to go on to greater heights commercially, to some extent greater heights artistically, but at no point subsequently in their history were they loved and had so much affection for as they did at this particular point, and it was never really repeated.
After 5 years on the road, Metallica now seemed to be on their way to the very top. But tragedy awaited them. On September 27, 1986, the tour bus they were in crashed on a mountain road in Sweden. Bass player Cliff Burton was killed at the tender age of 24.
That was really intense. I was at the house that morning when we got the call, and we thought it was Kirk because we just heard his mom. She was very upset on the phone, and then she told us it was Cliff. And it hit really hard. Cliff was a great guy, and it affected a lot of people, not just the band, but I mean, he had a lot of tight friends in the Bay Area, and I think him and James were just like, they were like this, and he was really, really affected, and it took him a long time.
To this day, we don't really know why it was that this bus flipped over on its side, and it was this unbelievable stroke of bad luck that Cliff would happen to be sleeping next to a window and be thrown out and crushed by the bus.
Oh, Cliff was the great. I mean, I think if Cliff was still alive, Metallica would be different as people. He's the one that kind of, you could tell how this is, slowly the success started getting to them, and Cliff was the only one that was always kind of keeping them grounded, to where he's like, don't let it get to you. And James looked up to Cliff too. So there was a little bit of a tuggle going on too, because Lars is more of a flashy kind of guy. He's like, oh, the rock star. And Cliff is more pure music, like people's kind of guy, And then there's a tuggle going on, and James is in between. James is, could be pulled either way.
Cliff played a guiding role in Metallica, certainly, on the Puppets album and before. And when that was taken away, it was very much down to Lars and James to decide the direction of the band.
And then it was just the Lars and James team, And Lars always felt, it was that Cliff was in the way. I know he would never admit it, straight out, and it would be a bad thing for him to do so. But it was, because James really looked up to Cliff. Cliff was so he was just an individual guy, It's like, it didn't matter to him to where everybody was in the scene and they wore leather, And Cliff was just by himself, and he's like, I don't care, I can listen to this kind of music, but I'm not going to dress like all of you. I just got my own. He wore bell bottoms where the peg, stretch pants were in, He just wouldn't do, just because something was cool. He just didn't care. He really was into music for the pure love of playing. Where Lars, for example, he was he loves playing, I'm not saying that, but he wasn't in it for success and money and everything else, so Cliff was, it's really a different kind of guy to where you don't meet people like that every day,
A mere month after Cliff's death, a new bassist was recruited. Jason Newsted, formerly with the B-League thrash metal band Flotsam and Jetsam, was suggested to Metallica by their old friend Brian Slagle, and after auditions of both his playing and his drinking ability, was asked to join the band. A tour of Japan followed.
The Japanese tour was just bizarre because it took place literally a month after Cliff died. They'd only had Jason in the band a couple of weeks, and they sort of put him through this initiation procedure, which was tantamount to persecution, really. They bullied him endlessly. It was all with a laugh and a joke. They used to bill their drink bills to his room, for example. They used to burst into his room at the dead of night and cover him with stuff, furniture and whatever, and shaving foam and all this stuff. Standard hijinks stuff. But it went on so long and was so kind of concentrated that I think pretty soon after that they looked back on it with a bit of regret as a serious bullying period. But Jason said a bit later on that he regarded it as a test. Could he fill Cliff's shoes? Could he handle being in a band like Metallica? And so he stood firm, which was great, because obviously he then stayed with the band for the next 15 years.
First thing we realized was that we were never ever going to find anyone like Cliff, so it was not like we were sort of looking for a Cliff Burton II or whatever, and we just needed, a bass player that would fit in. Jason has, strong individual personality and so forth, and, we'll see what happens when we start writing. We don't write on the road, so it's a little early to tell.
Jason came from a band called Flotsam and Jetsam, which they were a metal band. They were pretty good. I mean, some of their earlier stuff is pretty cool. I don't know exactly why they got him. Maybe he fit in personnel-wise or personality-wise the best.